One thing that I like to say is generative AI is like having a new intern or analyst on your desk. While you can give it rules and tell it what you want it to do, you let it do its own work, but you still always need to be reviewing it because ultimately you're responsible for the outputs that it's generating.
I'm joined today by Jana Borer, Strategy Consulting with Deloitte. Jana, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now here at REITwise, you led a discussion of the ongoing developments with generative artificial intelligence. Can you tell us about some of the most important advances that you have seen with AI in general over the past few years?
Sure. So AI, or the artificial intelligence, so using computers to try and mimic human-like thought, has been around for a long time, probably since the 1970s when they were inventing computers to be able to play chess. There's been a huge evolution in terms of a slow evolution in terms of building on those capabilities, being able to now have computer vision where a machine is able to look at a picture, interpret it as data. Where we really saw a huge breakthrough, though, was in 2003 with the advance of generative AI. And this was because of a couple different things in terms of technological breakthroughs in the types of algorithms that are being leveraged, as well as the processing power that's available. And I think one of the biggest changes has been the democratization or availability of these super advanced, very powerful techniques to now be able to apply and be accessible to everyday in your everyday life. And now we're seeing that corporates and enterprises are looking to see, how can I now apply these great technologies in generative AI into my workplace environment?
Now, looking specifically at the real estate industry, what are some of the practical ways that companies are employing generative AI in the accounting function?
Sure. So the power of generative AI is the ability for the AI to actually generate novel content. Generative AI, of course, we've been seeing it in everyday personal lives, people making fun videos of like cats being astronauts, not as practical in the real estate space. Where we have seen big advances, though, in terms of the skills and capabilities of generative AI is within summarization or within extraction capabilities. So we see a lot of practical applications in things like lease abstraction, being able to get higher quality data so that organizations are now able to make more informed, data-driven decisions. Some of the other really interesting advances has been the combination of not just generative AI, but being able to use things like machine vision. So what we've seen are clients actually being able to leverage things like drone technology that can take pictures of infrastructure, be able to interpret those pictures into data that the generative AI is actually able to analyze and say, we are seeing some rust on this bridge. So as we're thinking about prioritization from an infrastructure perspective, maybe that is one place that you should prioritize, being able to go review and do an in-person inspection.
Outside of real estate, how are companies using generative AI to simplify their businesses?
Sure. In terms of generative AI, one of the things that we've really been seeing clients focus on are where can they gain efficiencies by applying generative AI technology. Oftentimes, this happens in iterative types of processes that you're doing over and over again. So what it does is accelerate the time it takes to, in the lease abstraction example, be able to review a lease and take out the key terms to then put it into your ERP system. The generative AI solution can actually scan the document, even be able to read handwritten language or handwritten notes and interpret that into the key takeaways in terms of clauses or even start dates that may or may not have been edited along the way through the document.
And I understand that the idea of outsourcing functions can be scary when it comes to accuracy and reliability for companies. Is generative AI making strides in this area?
Yes, I think that's one of the big areas that our firm has actually done a lot of studies around is how can we help the people really employ and leverage generative AI in their businesses. And the biggest thing it comes down to is trust. So there's a couple different ways that people can gain trust. One is actually being able to use it, feel it, touch it, get familiar with the technology and how it can actually help them in their everyday jobs. A couple of the other things that we've seen people do in building out these generative AI tools is you'll often hear the comment, human in the loop. So always making sure that there is a human double checking the work. One thing that I like to say is generative AI is like having a new intern or analyst on your desk. while you can give it rules and tell it what you want it to do, you let it do its own work, but you still always need to be reviewing it because ultimately you're responsible for the outputs that it's generating. Being able to have that feedback loop has been one way to also be able to increase trust. And I think a lot of it is going to be as generative AI becomes more pervasive across all of the industry technologies, we're going to get more familiar and it will become second nature to how we do our jobs.